So hey guys, this is going to be a bit late, but today we'll be covering a bunch of different counters to essentially Maliss. So we don't really care today for just like going first strategies. Like we could Protoss lock our opponent, or if we want it to be even nastier than Protoss, there's something that's a little bit more consistent, kind of ish. If we use hieratic seals, we can go hieratic seals effect to summon a dragon monster from your hand or deck and make its attack / defense 0. So the target for this would be Quakey Meru Drago. And this says, during each of your end phases, destroy this card unless you send one Iron Core of Quakey Meru from your hand to the graveyard or reveal one dragon monster in your hand, which doesn't really matter in the context of this getting summoned off of seals. Neither player can special summon a light or dark monster, so this covers a little more ground. This would cover Fiendsmith as well, so Fiendsmith is not going to be able to activate anything. Well, you're not able to special summon any of your light fiend monsters, so Fiendsmith, absolutely cooked. Blue Eyes, cooked. And then we have dark monsters as well, which are Maliss monsters in this case. So those will not be special summonable. And we can just bounce back the normal summon. And then summon Quakey Meru Dragos up. Yeah, you can kind of see how that goes, right? And, worth mentioning, it doesn't target. So it'll kind of cook you alive. Like, really cook you. So, yeah. A lot of decks would lose to this. And all this requires is for you to essentially put 2 dragons on field. Yeah. Great, right? And then, alright, going over the cards that are actually good against this deck, if we go by, like, just hand traps, you would think that Infinite Impermanence kind of sucks, but Imperm and Valor are actually just perfectly fine. So, the thing is, a lot of people, especially in the higher ranks, they will cut TB11 altogether. And when it comes to the cards that can actually dodge, like an Infinite Impermanence, if you do not run TB11, you actually cannot use like GWC 06, so you actually only have MTP 07. And this will be the only card that some decks can actually use to kind of dodge the Imperm. So that would be like, if they set a card, most of the time, it's just a bluff. If you just raw Imperm whatever they normal summon, they're not going to be able to stop it. This is a one of in 40 cards. Let's see how long it takes me to just open MTP 07, okay? So let's see. 07. No 07. 07. No 07. 07. MTP 07. But I have no starter. Now we have White Rabbit. So how many hands was that? Well, let's do one more test. Right. No 07. No 07. No 07. No 07. No 07. No 07. 7. Nope. And then here we have 07. So, as you can see, like, the majority of the time, I will not open 07. So, if I did normal summon Dormouse or normal summon Mad Rabbit, and then it gets negated by Imperm, the Imperm will go through most of the time. So, with the luck that I've been getting, well, this isn't a starter, so I wouldn't really count this, but for the most part, we're seeing that whoever's imperming is actually favored over just hard opening the one of here, right? And if you see it or not is completely RNG, right? And then if you have a normal summon, that's also RNG. But yeah. If we wanted to play around Dormouse, special summon like a hand like this, if we activate like Mouse in Underground, even if you have MTP 07 set, we could just preemptively hit the Dormouse before it even activates, for example, in this case. Well, it's all like a little bit situational, I guess. But alright. Next thing on the list is, well, what hand traps are effective. So Bestials are effective. Nibiru is moderately effective. And with Bestials, it seems kind of like counterintuitive, but if you banish Link Decoder, this actually matters a lot for the combo. So the typical combo that a lot of people will do is they're going to summon Red Ransom, right? And then if they have no extender after the Red Ransom, they actually cannot play the game. Sometimes. Depends on exactly what they've resolved already. But you know, the play a lot of the time is for like Maliss in the Underground to banish the Red Ransom, which you can't do unless the Red Ransom is in the graveyard. And speaking of which, you know, Ghost Spell is pretty good as well. So we prevent March Hare from banishing, that prevents the special summoning of March Hare plus whatever they're attempting to banish. So that's like pretty good, I guess, worth mentioning. And then we have the ability to prevent Malice and Underground from activating as well, with the effect of the Ghost Spell, kinda negating the activation, I believe. That's what Bell does, right? So we can do that on Malice in Underground if it is searched off of like Red Ransom, or if our opponent tries to use this as a starter. This has technically 6 cards it can hit, which is pretty decent. And then you can also prevent like technically Splash Mage and a few other cards, but I'm not 100% sure when it will be relevant exactly, but it could be. And then let's see what else. Well, if we have like Bestial Drizzworm, this actually contests appo pretty hard. So we have special summon Drizzworm by banishing a card, and that seems like it doesn't matter, but there are actually a lot of targets where a Bestial, even a late Bestial, can be fairly effective. So for example, if we were playing Terahertz, we can banish Decevworm with the effect of Drizzworm to prevent our opponent from having a spell trap negate. If they appo negate our Drizzworm, then we can just Drizzworm again the following turn. So that'll be some bad vibes, I guess. And then if Drizzworm is of course sent to the graveyard, this can remove any special summon monster, such as Terahertz, which then would not be able to activate its effect, I guess, right? Of the Sevworm if it gets sent. And also worth mentioning, I guess, with the Drizzworm is if you were to appo negate this twice, I still have this in hand to activate this again third time to banish something that may or may not be relevant. It's a bit situational, I guess. So surprisingly, like Bestial's pretty decent in general, and banishing like Link Decoder, that does matter. And a kind of like sleeper, kind of just good card as well is Ghost Ogre. So we have Ghost Ogre, which can be used against Apollosa. If Apollosa does not reduce its attack, then it does not negate. So if we have a combination of like Imperm or Ghost Ogre versus like the Appo, like with a nib, you can just wipe their whole board and there's not much your opponent can do about it. So pretty good, I would say, in general. And we could do Ghost Ogre on Terahertz, for example, as well, to destroy it and remove it from the field. So all of those options are kind of available too. So Ghost Ogre is also decent, I guess, just in general. And what else do we have aside from these? We have Ghost Ogre, Bestials, Ghost Bell, and I guess the other thing about these cards is they're a little more generic and more useful than, in my opinion, Lancia. So I would prefer running these cards, even if like Lancia is able to completely shut down Malice. Malice is not the only deck you're facing. So I definitely do not prefer Lancia over these cards in general. Imperm, fine option as well. But yeah, if you really think about it, the actual like Malice pieces, like their actual, I guess their starters and such, their combo pieces, they're barely hand trap resistant to the point where sometimes it's actually worth thinking about like what is their end board actually, and then stopping your opponent based on that instead. So if your opponent has no actual back row to activate, like no MTP07 or GWC06 that they're going to be activating this turn, then maybe there's the idea of negating White Binder to prevent set GWC06, because the play is usually like you set GWC06 and then you would have White Rabbit setting MTP07 on the next turn, which this would stop if they don't have access to the 06 here. Unless they do like banish White Binder to then banish the White Rabbit. But of course you also have like the option of Visceral Banish White Rabbit, technically. I guess I have to analyze that line a little bit more, but yeah. Seems fairly fine. And then we have as well the idea of like Ghost Ogre on Haggard Lizardos, or Ghost Ogre on like Splash Mage, which is pretty good. Just any of those guys getting hit, pretty decent. If we were to like Ghost Ogre a White Binder or just whatever, it's not that bad. It depends on the exact situation though, I guess, as well. So yeah, the deck, not that scary, honestly, to an extent. If we were to hold like our Imperm, we could knock off 2 negates on Appo, and we would still have 5 cards in hand, for example. And then in terms of what the end board actually puts out, then we're going to be worried about maybe at best like a Firewall Dragon, and then we're staring down. There's going to be no Heart Scripter, I guess it'd be like White Binder, Special Summon, and then Special Summon some of the other guys, and then MTP07 Banish. So it's like 2 interactions. If you really think about it, like we're going to ignore like the main deck cards for a bit, like hand traps and stuff, non-engine essentially. Well, with the engine, how many interruptions does Maliss put out? We have the Appo for 2. We have Firewall Dragon, which is 1. And then if you want to include it, White Binder, 4. And then we have MTP07 as number 5. And you have 6 cards, so it's not that difficult to play through necessarily. Even assuming, you know, you just mostly open engine and they get to full combo. You could hold the Imperm, hit the Appo, and that knocks down the interruptions to either 3 or 2, which is fairly manageable in my opinion. So yeah, not something I would be super worried about. Depends on like how many hand traps and what hand traps they're running here as well then. So if they draw into some annoying hand traps, could be kind of bad for you depending on exactly what list you're playing, I guess. So yeah, Maliss, not that big of a deal. I guess maybe it's like a mindset difference that you kind of have to be prepared for here. So for like Nibiru, for example, even if I hold the Nibiru, then you still will have to Appaloosa negate Nibiru, like pretty much just guaranteed. So if I just have a solo nib, I can nib effect, and then you have to, that will knock off an Appo negate, so you're down to still 1 negate, and I still will have that nib for a later turn. So for turn 2 and 3, if you special summon too many times, I can still threaten Nibiru again, which is pretty interesting. We have to kind of check how many times you actually special summon though real quick. Okay. Activate GWC06, special summon White Binder. White Binder effect to banish. You would probably banish at least 2 monsters, I'm thinking. And then there's potential of special summoning March Hare as well, and special summoning something else off of that, or you can just hold the March Hare, I guess. So March Hare, we don't need to account for that yet. White Binder, special summons, banish, Mad, or not Mad, Maliss White Rabbit. So that's 2 monsters. And you usually would also want to banish the Red Ransom. The red ransom would banish something as well, so that's 4 special summons. If you actually started with the March Hare, then that would get you to 5. And then if you were to summon any Bestials or anything like that, that definitely puts you to 5. So you could potentially board wipe your opponent on turn 2. And then turn 3, depending on what happens in turn 2, you will still have the nib. So if your opponent summons access code, banish, summon heart scripter and stuff, you can nib there too, right? There's potential there as well. That's dependent on what you're playing. If you're able to like hold nib that long though, which is interesting. All right then. What else we got? Anything else interesting? Well, let's see. I don't think there's any other like super particularly good wing second strategies. I guess Metaltronus is okay because we could, depending on how they do their stuff, right? If they don't put like Red Ransom on the field, we could Metaltronus the White Binder to turn off like 07 potentially. But then there's like, I guess maybe Marcher banish Red Ransom. So that's not that insane. So I guess just like Backrow removal is pretty good if you're able to like find it. Seems pretty solid. But yeah. The choke points for this deck doesn't feel great, and also there's like a bajillion extenders, so that also doesn't feel super great. But using some of these hand traps as kind of like board breakers is kind of possible, or kind of to insulate your plays. Just for example, we could negate MTP 07 on the second turn as well. Like, it's not something you would necessarily always do. It's kind of like situation dependent. You know, it's dependent on a situation. But you have the option of Ash Blossom Geospring to negate 07 effect, which will also negate the non-target banish. So that's an idea, I guess. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.